Hello, this is Truth Jihad Radio, and you're listening to a song called Khidr and the Fountain by Six Organs of Admittance. And by the way, whoever Six Organs of Admittance is, please do not sue me for using your song. Just contact me by way of my website, truthjihad.com, and I'll send you a few bucks. Speaking of which, if you want me to keep doing this show, you too, dear listener, should go to truthjihad.com and send me a few bucks. If you want to subscribe for $3.95 a month and get early access to the shows and free downloads, that would be even better. So thank you for your support of Truth Jihad Radio. And now, over to our interview with Sheikh Imran Hosein. Welcome to Truth Jihad Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett, bringing on guests who have uncommon insights way outside of the mainstream box. Today, I'm going back to one of my very most favorite regular guests, and to be frank, really the one Islamic scholar in the world today that I truly and deeply respect, and that is Sheikh Imran Hosein. Sheikh Imran Hosein is the author of a long list of books. Recently, the methodology for study of the Quran, also the strategic importance of dreams and visions in Islam, and he is associated with promoting the concept of Muslim villages. That would be rural places to go during this very likely end times period that we're living through. So without further elaboration, welcome Sheikh Imran Hosein.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm honored to be once again on your radio program, and I offer my greetings to the listening audience. There in the United States, I'm speaking to you from my home in the Caribbean island of Trinidad.
And you've been traveling quite a bit, based most of the time in Malaysia and sometimes Trinidad, since you left the United States on 9/11.
I have a base in Malaysia, and I have a home in Trinidad, and I was in Malaysia for the most of this year. I left Malaysia in late October and flew to Iran and made a tour of several cities like Tabriz and Mashhad and the one called Golgam and Tehran. And then I flew via Vienna to Geneva, where I had a dialogue with Alain Soral, the French philosopher, and also a seminar which I conducted on the Quran and the beginning of history. And then I flew from Geneva via Zurich to Sao Paulo in Brazil and had an evening dinner together with my students in Sao Paulo. And then the next day I flew from Sao Paulo to Bogota in Colombia to Caracas and had about 9 hours stopover in Caracas before I flew to Trinidad 1 week ago.
And so, this is so interesting, and the listeners really should be reminded that you've been outside the USA during the post 9/11 period. You were sort of the original Muslim for 9/11 Truth. You'd been an imam in Queens, New York, as I recall, and quickly saw through the 9/11 charade, called it what it was, and from that point on realized that you were essentially unwelcome in the United States, or rather the United States was unwelcome for you. So we are in the Akhir Zaman, or the final period of history, according to your analysis. And just briefly, before we discuss your books, do you have any comments on the recent events, for example, in Syria, the American elections, the Russian moves in Syria in particular? Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Imran. I'm sorry, I guess we lost the call. So I guess I was just reminding the listeners that you had been working as an imam in New York prior to 9/11, and then as the sort of original Muslim for 9/11 Truth, you left the USA and have been traveling to many places, but have not been back here since then.
No, I've not been back in the United States since then, but I believe that with the election of Donald Trump as president-elect now, there is a window of opportunity. I may be able to even return to the United States for a visit now. I don't know how long this window will remain open.
Well, that's very interesting. Maybe you could give us your analysis of this Trump phenomenon. Frankly, I'm quite skeptical. I liked some of Trump's rhetoric, but not his appointments and advisors. What do you think?
Well, I am not endorsing Donald Trump in any way, not at all. But what I'm saying is that it was very plain and clear that for a long, long time now, the forces of oppression in the world, in modern Western civilization, those forces of oppression, the oppressors have controlled the media. They control radio and television and the newspapers, and they've been using it to brainwash mankind. That's the war on Islam, which has been going on for so long now, using the slogan of war on terrorism. So what was clear from the elections in the United States was that one candidate was being consistently demonized, and the other candidate was the favored one of the establishments. And up to the moment of the elections, it was almost a foregone conclusion that the favored one of the establishment was going to be winning the election, and the one who was demonized was going to lose. Lo and behold, the results of the elections indicate that a substantial number of American people refused to accept the message that was coming from the media. They rejected it. And that's a good sign for me. It's a good sign. It means that we had given up hope for the American people. That they were perhaps the most brainwashed people on the face of the earth. But lo and behold, here is startling evidence that they are beginning to wake up and they're resisting the brainwashing. And as a consequence, they voted for the other candidate who was being demonized, and he won the election. And that appears to me to have the potential of crossing the Atlantic Ocean and impacting upon the electorate in France and in Belgium and in Germany and other places. And therefore, the oppressors of the world are probably in a state of panic now, that their brainwashing machine is no longer working as it used to work before. That's my first comment on the election of Trump. It's a hopeful sign for me. That does not mean that I'm endorsing Mr. Trump, but I'm saying that those who have a little bit of common sense in their head and a little bit of integrity in their head would recognize that a substantial proportion of the American electorate resisted the brainwashing of the media. And I'm perfectly correct in that analysis.
Yes.
My second comment is, had the favorite of the media been elected, Clinton had won the election, then you don't need much. You just need a few cents of intelligence to recognize that the world would have been facing nuclear war right away. Right away. But on the contrary, with the election of Trump, we now have the possibility of averting nuclear war for some time. I don't think it's going to be for long, because they want they're lusting for nuclear war. The oppressors of the world, they're lusting for nuclear war against Russia and against China. But with the election of Trump, who is the president-elect, the real president, we see the possibility that nuclear war with Russia can be averted for a while. He has very sensible views pertaining to American relations with Russia. My last comment is that the oppressors of the world must be in such a state of panic that there is the possibility that they may seek to provoke the war with Russia before January 20th, before Trump actually becomes the president. And then he will then be faced with a fait accompli. If war with Russia is to be provoked before January 20th, the most likely act of provocation would be to get Erdogan in Turkey, who is their favorite son, to get him to attack Syria, and that would provoke the war.
Well, he seems to have already done that.
These are my initial comments on. Hello?
Yes, he seems to have already done that in the sense that Turkish troops are in Syria, and Erdogan has announced that their purpose is to overthrow the Syrian government.
Yeah, we never trusted him. He's not a man to be trusted at all. He's a favored son of NATO, and he pretends to be otherwise. He boasted and he gloated over the fall of the Libyan government. Now NATO is in Libya. And I say shame on Erdogan and shame on Turkey. I have no qualms at all in condemning Erdogan and Turkey for what they did in Libya. What they have done in Syria is even worse. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have suffered tremendously because of Turkey's participation with Saudi Arabia and the CIA in this overt attempt to overthrow the legitimate Syrian government. And so we condemn him, and he's not a man to be trusted. And what they had in Turkey was not a legitimate attempt at a coup at all. I believe it was all fake, stage marriage, to give Erdogan an opportunity to do what he's done in Turkey and what he's been doing in Syria.
Okay. Well, as far as Trump's prospects for avoiding war, I don't know if you've been paying attention to his appointees, but it seems that he's really surrounded by the most extreme neoconservative fringe, including many suspected 9/11 criminals. And those people have a sort of an ideology of total, hatred of all forms of Islam. They hate the Saudi Wahhabi version of Islam, but they hate the Iranian Shia version of Islam. They hate all Islam, and they especially hate Palestine because they're basically Zionists. And so these people, it seems to me, are really not a very good bet for avoiding war very long. And on the contrary, they may very well provoke war, just perhaps not by the same routes as Hillary Clinton's people would have.
I will be very careful in my comments. I said, first of all, this is a positive sign that so many Americans resisted the brainwashing, and that this can possibly go over the Atlantic and having consequences in France, in Germany, in Belgium, etc. And I believe I'm correct in that comment that I made. Number two, I have said that if the other candidate had been elected as president, we would already be facing nuclear war. And as a consequence of Trump becoming the president-elect, we now have a window, a small window of peace, where the possibility of war has receded for a while. But I'm not at all of the view that nuclear war can be postponed indefinitely. No. I have said that those who are the oppressors in the world are lusting for nuclear war. And they're going to get it eventually. And this is what our prophet, Allah bless him be upon him, has prophesied. So we know that war is coming. But I believe I'm absolutely correct, perfectly correct in my view, that as a consequence of the result of the elections in the United States, we now have a little window.
And that relates...
A window of peace with no war, yes. I'm not saying, I'm not making any endorsement of Trump and saying he's going to be a great president, he's going to be a friend of Islam, and that he's going to be a friend of those who are against the person in the world, and so on and so on. But I see some signs that I believe I ought to comment upon. The other one is, of course, his refusal, his courageous refusal to join the bandwagon of hatred against Russia and against Putin. I mean, it was very courageous of him to stand up against the whole establishment in elections and consistently maintain his position of admiration for Putin, which I also hold admiration for Putin, and refusal to blame Russia and to launch the demonization of Russia and Putin. He refused to do that, and this is something to be commended on his part. One looks forward, if he's alive, on January 20th, I don't know if they'll do to him what they did to JFK. And if you don't know what they did to JFK, I believe you buy a one-way ticket and go to the moon. What they did to JFK, they might possibly want to do to Trump as well. If he's still alive on January 20th, and if Erdogan has not provoked the wars yet since before January 20th, then the world is likely to see Trump reaching out to Putin and having dialogue with Putin at summit conferences with Putin, which would be something which would be astonishing for the world to see the United States adopting a sensible policy in its relations with Russia. And if that were to take place, nuclear war would recede.
And that impacts on the topic of Muslim villages, which is kind of an idea that you've promoted more than anyone else, at least in terms of getting attention for this idea. The Muslim villages are rural places where Muslims can try to live authentic lives as Muslims, and which would presumably be relatively likely to be good places to be in the event of this kind of great war that's prophesied. So maybe we have a little more time to get to these villages now.
Well, what I do regret now is that when I began promoting the concept of Muslim villages, and now it is taken off, and it is so popular now around the world, the concept of the Muslim village, I should have devoted a little bit more time and attention to pointing out that we don't want a village that is exclusively Muslim. No. We want to be what St. Augustine, the Christian St. Augustine, once called it the city of God, or we call it the village of God, where people who follow the religious way of life could come together. I would love to see the village as a village in which Christians and Muslims and Jews who all have the same viewpoint, that we want to return to the religious way of life and we want to preserve the religious way of life, can come together and live in fraternity. That, I believe, I should have done when I was promoting the concept of the Muslim village. As a consequence of my not doing it, the viewpoint has been established now. It's going to be an exclusively Muslim village. And an exclusive Muslim village is dangerous, really, in the world today.
That's interesting. Well, I just recently got a PDF of the book The Muslim Village by Walid Sword, who dedicates it to you. And I haven't had a chance to actually read this book yet. I've skimmed it and looked at parts of it. Did he incorporate this notion of a multi-confessional Muslim village in the book? Do you know?
I have not read the book as yet, but I believe, because so many have been influenced by my thinking, it is unlikely that they would have reached out to the other view. It's going to be a village where Muslims and Christians and Jews, people who worship the one God, can all come together to live together in a religious fraternity. That is why I was negligent, really, in expressing myself at that time, and now it may be a little too late, because the concept of the Muslim villages were so entrenched in the world today. What my friend has done, Walid Sawdat, is pen name. That's not his real name. He's living in the Western world, and he tries to, for security reasons, use a pen name. Is to, first of all, to recognize it. The believing Christian will also agree with us, and the believing Jew will agree with us that we live in a world today which is so different from yesterday. Yesterday was a more beautiful world. The earth was purer yesterday. Yesterday the rivers were clean. Yesterday we never disrespected water. We never disrespected life, hunting animals and killing them just for fun and for sport. No. We never pumped sewage into our rivers and to our lakes. No. Coastal waters never did that. Yesterday, the world was so different. Today, the world appears to be rotting. And despite all of the gadgetry of modern technology with the cell phones and these things, the world is rotting. And those who live the religious way of life recognize that around the world today, there's a multi-dimensional attack on religious values, religious beliefs, and moral values. And the cities of the world are where the attack is strongest of all. And most of all, you find it in the shopping malls. And those who want to preserve the religious way of life, preserve moral values, have to retreat from this world. And retreat is out of the cities and into the countryside. And the more remote you can go into the countryside, the safer you would be. This philosophy of withdrawal for the purpose of the preservation of faith and the values has come about in consequence of our perception that the world today is rotting from the perspective of religion and from the perspective of morality.
Indeed it is. In a sense, these Muslim villages or multi-confessional traditional villages might perform a function a little bit like that of monasteries during the European Dark Ages that preserved what culture was there in a kind of a rural setting, and the people there had to kind of provide for themselves. Is that a good analogy?
Yes, I believe that the Muslim village in which you have a monastery, a Christian monastery, and a Christian church, and a Muslim masjid, a Jewish synagogue, all in the same village, and establishing fraternal relations with each other, would send a message to the rest of the world that this brainwashing that is coming from the enemy should be resisted, because here is a concrete example of interreligious harmony and fraternity based on the common premise that we want to preserve religious values and we want to preserve moral values. But there's one more thing, and that is that at the heart of true religion, at the heart of Orthodox Christianity, at the heart of true Judaism, and at the heart of the true religion of Islam, there's zero tolerance for oppression. And so the Muslim village and the Christian village and the Jewish village, when they come together, have no place at all for the oppressor. The Christian oppressor, the Jewish oppressor, the supporter of the state of Israel, and the oppressor among the Muslims, who are like the Saudi regime and so on, they don't have any place at all in the Muslim village. The Muslim village has to be a place where people would resist oppression, resist the oppressor, and would long for the day when they can liberate the oppressed.
Well, it seems that this vision of Muslims and Christians and Jews living peacefully together, worshiping God in a traditional village, is kind of the exact opposite of the image that the media keeps promoting of Islam in the form of so-called Islamic State or Daesh, where they want to ethnically cleanse and just get rid of, kill or expel and just not tolerate the presence of not only most Christians and Zoroastrians and Jews and unbelievers of all kinds, but also most Muslims who have different interpretations of Islam from theirs. So would you say that this Islam...
There are lots of Muslims who have the wrong view of Pax Islamica, that Islam has come into the world to rule the world, which is rubbish with a capital R. Allah never sent the religion of Islam in the world to rule the world, not at all. In fact, this lust to rule the world, L-U-S-T, the lust to rule the world, was there in the beginning of history. When Allah said to Adam alayhi salam and his wife to go and live in the garden, the Jannah, paradise, He told them, do not approach this tree, because if you approach this tree, you're going to be wicked in your conduct. Which tree was it? It wasn't a mulberry tree. No, you don't understand this literally at all. It has to be understood symbolically. And it was Iblis himself, Satan himself, who did the interpretation for us. When Satan approached Adam and he said to him, shall I introduce you, هل أدلك على شجرة الخلد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هل أدلك على شجرة الخلد, shall I introduce you to the tree of eternal life, with eternity? But then he went on to say something more. وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى, and to a mulk or a state which will never perish. The lust to live eternally and the lust to rule eternally is there in that forbidden tree. They want to rule eternally. That's why they gave us Pax Britannica, which then made way to Pax Americana, and which is now going to make way for their Pax Judaica, so that the state of Israel can rule the world and rule the world eternally. That lust to rule eternally is there at the beginning of history. We never had a part of this. The Jew who is a true Jew, not a Jew who's been taken for a ride, the Christian who is a true Christian, and the Muslim who is a true Muslim, never longs to live forever. No, life and death are in Allah's hands, and when Allah chooses to call us, we go. But they want to live forever. They wish they could live for 1,000 years. That is one of the hallmarks of modern Western civilization. And they want to rule. That's why they want war with Russia. That's why they want China. They want China and Russia to bend their knees to them. But China is not going to bend her knee, and Russia is not going to bend her knee. They want to rule the world. But that has never been a part of Islam.
Do you think
to rule the world?
You think it's a sign of the end times that this imperial, U.S. foreign policy is being conducted according to an oscillation between the two most eminent advisors who are both over 100 years old, Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger? Can you believe it? Two 100-year-old men who are ruling the world today.
They are part and parcel of supporters of the master plan that Pax Judaica would replace Pax Americana. It is Islamic eschatology which has delivered to the world for the first time an accurate analysis and interpretation of the phenomenon of Pax Britannica, its succession by Pax Americana, and the likelihood that the world will now witness a Pax Judaica replacing Pax Americana, so that the state of Israel can rule the world, and that the ruler over the state of Israel will one day proclaim from Jerusalem that he is the Messiah. But he would not be the true Messiah. He would be the false Messiah. This is Islamic eschatology explaining this phenomenon. It has never been explained before. No political scientist, nowhere, has been able to explain the phenomenon of the emergence of Pax Britannica and show its link with Pax Americana as a successor in order to make way for a Pax Judaica. This is the first time the world is witnessing this kind of analysis. But to get back to our subject, Daesh and those who are supporters of Daesh in the world of Islam are a people who are misguided in their interpretation and understanding of Islam as a sort of an imperialist power, that Islam wants to rule the world, that Islam wants to rule India once again, when the first time it was not Islam that was ruling over India, it was oppression, it was imperial Islam, and it was meant to provoke into India to have such hatred, eternal hatred for Islam, that you now have the situation which is totally in their favor. That was what we had in India, an imperial Islam that came to sabotage the true Islam. Then we had the Ottoman Empire doing exactly the same thing in the Balkans with Orthodox Christianity, serving the cause of the Antichrist, waging endless wars against Orthodox Christians, bogus jihad, they were unjust wars, to try to provoke eternal hatred amongst the Orthodox Christians against Islam. This kind of thinking amongst Muslims has to be exposed and destroyed, because this is not Islam. We never wanted to rule the world, not at all.
Well, how do you differentiate between a more sort of legitimate form of Islamic governance in a hostile world in which inevitably there seem to be these kinds of wars that go back and forth that lead to a phenomenon not unlike a kind of imperial Islam? One could even see some of that in the days of the Prophet, peace upon him. And we could look at other Islamic polities or polities ruled by Muslims. Islamic Spain, which was famous for tolerance, was created by imperial expansion. How do you differentiate between that sort of thing and what you're calling this really demonic kind of imperial Islam, this totally mistaken form?
Imperial Islam is that bogus Islam which wages unjust war to extend the frontiers of a so-called Islamic State. It has to be denounced. It was there in India, and because Islamic scholarship in India refuses to denounce it, that's why they're where they are today. They're imprisoned in India today, and they're in a helpless situation today, and they deserve their fate because they can't see that they were taken for a ride. It was not Islam. It was imperial Islam in India. What right does a handful of Muslims have to rule over all of Hindu India? What right do they have? Who appointed them to give that, to do that? The same thing with the Balkans, the same thing with the Orthodox Christians. The hatred for Islam is so intense in these two parts of the world because the Dajjal wanted to sabotage an end-time alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians. But despite all that the Ottoman Empire did for 500 to 600 years, we now see before the eyes of the world a pattern which is emerging now, that what Allah has ordained in the Quran is coming to pass. Allah said in the Quran that you will most certainly find in time to come that those who will have the greatest love and affection for you Muslims would be a people who would declare that they are Christians. They would not hide their identity as Christians. They would be proud of being Christian. It's most certainly not Western Christianity. And these would be a people who would have the institution of monasticism amongst them, and the priesthood of the ulama still intact. And they'd not be an arrogant people. The Orthodox Christians don't want to rule the world. No. Never mind. Russia was once communist with Soviet Russia and did a lot of wrong things. But now look at what's happening. Before the eyes of the world, Russia is returning to her Orthodox Christian roots, and this is something should warm the heart of every Muslim, except those brainwashed Muslims of Bosnia and Macedonia and Albania who prefer to be in the arms of NATO. They can't think in that part of the world. As Allah has said in the Quran, these are the people who are going to be closest in love and affection for you. And that is what is now happening. Russia is now adopting a policy that is more fraternal to true Islam. If Russia had not intervened in Syria, the Christians of Syria would have been slaughtered in this bogus jihad. Today, because Russia intervened in Syria, we have been saved. Syria has not become another Libya, and thank Allah for that, and thank Putin for that. The Muslims who hold this wrong view must be exposed, and this viewpoint must be abandoned. What we do have, however, in the world of Islam today is a confusion that from the Western world has come the Republican state. And the hearts of the Muslims are still attached to the Khilafah state. There's only one Islamic state. Only one Islamic state, and that's the Khilafah state. If there's any other, it came from the moon. It should be sent back to the moon. So it's either the Khilafah state or a Republican state. The Khilafah state recognizes Allah's sovereignty. The Republican state says, no, it's of the people, for the people, and by the people. Allah has no involvement in this at all. And so you find in Indonesia today now a whole upheaval going on in Indonesia because the hearts of the people are with the Khilafah state. They want religion to be the ruling force in the state. And you have the state which is already established as a Republican state. So that's why you have the present impasse in Indonesia. You have Pakistan, which is on the one hand an Islamic state, and on the other hand it's a Republican state. It's very foolish. How can you have a virtuous prostitute? Don't these people have any sense? How can you say that this is a virtuous prostitute? She's a prostitute, she can't be virtuous. It's logically impossible. But yet Pakistan is an Islamic republic. And so to Iran, an Islamic republic. It's funny to me. You can't be Islamic and also republic. We have this impasse in the world of Islam that there is a longing for the restoration of the Khilafah state in the hearts of the people. But we have been imprisoned in the system of Republican states. So along comes Daesh to say, okay, let us now tap into this heart longing of the people for the Khilafah state. So Baghdadi comes along and says, I'm going to deliver to you the Khilafah state. It's a bogus Khilafah state. It's a bogus jihad on the part of Daesh. And I'm so grateful and thankful to Russia that is doing the job effectively to destroy it.
So what might an authentic Khilafah state in our time look like? And related to that question, how can there be any Muslim governance in the world as it is, given that all forms of governance in today's world are necessarily imperial?
A Khilafah state is what Israel is trying to do. The movement from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana to Pax Judaica is because the supporters and the participants in the state of Israel want to establish a Khilafah state. They may not call it by that name, but that's what they want to do. They want to create a Khilafah state in Israel. When Allah sent mankind upon the face of the earth, He said to the angels, I'm going to send one on earth who is going to be Khalifa, meaning he's going to establish Khilafah. That is why He sent mankind on the earth, to establish the Khilafah state. And then He says in the Quran, He says, Ya Dawood, O David, Inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. We are hereby appointing you as Khalifa on earth. David is in Judaism. David is in Christianity. And he is appointed as Khalifa. And Allah goes on to say, فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِالْحَقِّ. That when you establish the Khilafah state, governance, rule, law must be based on truth. Truth does not come from CNN. Most certainly doesn't come from Washington. Truth comes from Allah. So the Christian has a religious obligation to establish a Khilafah state. And the Byzantine Empire was an attempt to establish a Khilafah state. The Jew has an obligation to establish a Khilafah state, and they both came before Islam. And the Muslims, the third people who have an obligation to establish a Khilafah state. So there's a common bond between all three, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, to establish a Khilafah state. A Khilafah state is not exclusive to Islam. And what is a Khilafah state? It is a state in which governance and rule and law is based on truth. Truth which has come from the one God. Full stop. Kevin, full stop. That's a Khilafah state.
Well, that gives us the precise opposite of the neoconservative philosophy of governance, that governance is always based on lies. And we may have to wait till the coming of who knows of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam or the Imam Mahdi to get a government based on truth.
Oh, no. We are about to see now nuclear war. And then after nuclear war, you're going to see a state of Israel behaving differently. A state of Israel is going to be saying, we got to clean up the mess in the world. There's too much godlessness in the world. We got to return to religion. This is what they're going to see from Israel. And they're going to be making an effort to try. They're going to use gold and silver coins as money. And they're going to denounce this monetary system as bogus and fraudulent and haram. That's Israel tomorrow. That's Israel tomorrow. But they're going to do it on the basis of oppression, and that's why it's bogus. It's bogus. So we, on the other hand, once the nuclear war takes place, the forces of Gog and Magog are going to be weak in the north. So Russia is going to checkmate NATO in the north. But the forces of Gog and Magog are going to be concentrated in the Arab world, in and around Israel. That's where they're going to be strongest of all, in order for Pax Judaica to replace Pax Americana. But because Gog and Magog are going to be weak in the periphery, there is now an opportunity, as there will now be an opportunity after nuclear war that there's never been for the last few hundred years, for the forces of Islam, of Christianity, of Judaism, all those who want to restore to religion and to morality and to truth the place it should have in society, for us to come together in a joint effort to try to restore the Khilafah state. I hope and pray it will never be an exclusive Muslim effort. No. The effort for restoring a Khilafah state must be one in which we must reach out to those Christians who will be closest in love and affection for us in a joint struggle.
I mean, well, isn't it strange that it's the friends of the West, like Erdogan and Daesh and the Gulf rulers, who are promoting this Khilafah state as a exclusively Muslim, exclusively Salafist, or exclusively Wahhabist, ethnically cleansed kind of situation. Or in the case of Turkey, I guess it's not the Salafists, but they're still trying to ethnically cleanse people and not live with the other. What is it that stops us from loving the other and makes it so hard to live with the other?
The effort which has been made to produce Daesh from Turkey and from Saudi Arabia and from the CIA is again yet another effort to sabotage Islam. Islam being the truth which has come from Allah with Nabi Musa alayhi salam, with Nabi Isa alayhi salam, with Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. They sabotaged al-Islam with India, with their bogus Muslim rule over India. They sabotaged al-Islam with the Ottoman Empire, with their bogus Muslim rule over Orthodox Christians. And now they're seeking to sabotage al-Islam once again with this bogus struggle for an exclusive Khilafah state that is Muslim alone, on the basis of waging bogus jihad with weapons, that state-of-the-art weapons that come from Santa Claus, and loads of US dollars, which also come from Santa Claus. A Yankee jihad, I call it.
Yes, that's my analysis as well. And the deceptions are so extreme in this system that it seems that along with the debt, which keeps getting bigger and bigger, but the lies and deceptions on the one hand, and the debt, the riba or usury debt on the other hand, both keep kind of growing exponentially. And one expects that this would collapse one way or another, with or without a nuclear war.
What we can hold on to at this time, Kevin, is that the truth must survive, and the truth must eventually triumph. What we must not do is to believe that we Muslims have an exclusive claim to truth. That is false. We must believe, on the other hand, that there is truth which came before us, came before the Quran. And we must reach out to that truth in Christianity, in Judaism, all those who are opposed to the oppressors in the world today, to build a common front of solidarity against the common enemy. That should be the philosophy with which we should pursue the effort for restoring a Khilafah state.
Well, I was just speaking with a guy who blogs as Trad Cat Knight, or Traditional Catholic Knight, and in an effort to have that kind of interfaith dialogue with people and seek the truth with people from different outlooks. And he thinks that the strongest candidate for Dajjal in today's world is this Maitreya figure, an alleged sort of one world ruler that has been set up in news stories and advertisements and sort of urban legends. Have you looked into that at all?
No, I've not. I'm sorry, I've not. I'm not aware of this.
Okay, yeah, I'm not much either, so we'll pass on for just a few minutes. We have a few minutes left. Your book on dreams is quite brilliant. Dreams are very, very important in Islamic tradition. And when I was learning about Islam, when I was in Morocco doing a Fulbright study, I picked up a copy of Ibn Sirin's famous book of dream interpretation, which is actually still a bestseller in the Islamic world. Well, your book, The Strategic Importance of Dreams and Visions in Islam, looks at this topic from perspectives that unite sort of the geopolitics that you're famous for and your views of spiritual development. And you say that good dreams, or rather you cite scripture as telling us that good dreams are the only thing that remains of prophecy in the world after the passing of the last prophet, peace upon him. And so to conclude, how do we work with dreams? How do we cultivate those good and true dreams?
I think that the statement of Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, that prophethood is comprised of 46 different parts, and all of these parts will end with him, except one part which will remain in the world after him. And that one part of prophethood which will remain in the world, he said, is ru'ya sadiqa and ru'ya salihah. A ru'ya is that which we see with the internal eye and which Allah delivers as a gift. And it is more popularly known as a vision. Some dreams are visions. And I would like to take the subject of true dreams and true visions on the basis of this hadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and now located in a branch of knowledge known as epistemology. Namely, that in the last age, in the last time, in Akhirul Zaman, the one who is best equipped to be a guide for the people is the one who sees not only with the external eye, but also with the internal eye, and who receives knowledge directly from Allah. And the Quran has given us in Surah Al-Kahf precisely such a model. Hello?
Yes, I'm with you.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
The Quran has given us precisely such a model in Khidr al-Salam. The total collapse of Islamic scholarship in the world today. We are in a deplorable state in the world of Islam today. The world of Islamic scholarship has failed and failed miserably to penetrate the reality of the world today and respond to it appropriately. The reason for that is because the model of Islamic scholarship and of Christian scholarship and of Jewish scholarship in the world in Akhirul Zaman has to be Khidr alayhi salam. One who sees with not only the external eye, but also the internal eye, who receives knowledge directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who is able to interpret religious symbolism. This is the man that we need today. So when we look for scholars today, don't ask me to give you names. Rather, I say look for footprints. And when you find footprints resembling that of Khidr alayhi salam, that is the most important thing that comes out of the book of dreams and visions.
Well, according to legends, the footprints of Khidr alayhi salam sprout green things. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Okay, well, thank you so
I have a little booklet on the subject,
yes,
in search of Khidr footprints in Akhirul Zaman.
Yes, Khidr's footprints in Akhirul Zaman.
Small booklet.
Yeah. I think that may have been the first book of yours I read. Thank you so much, Sheikh Imran Hosein. I love your beautiful work. It's an amazing contribution to Islamic scholarship and really a spiritual education to anybody, whether you're Muslim or not. You should really look into this, people. So bless you and your work. Look forward to the next one, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for giving me this chance to reach out to the American listening audience.
Okay, well, thank you for doing so, and Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
That was Sheikh Imran Hosein talking about a number of very interesting topics. I'm going to close this show by reading a passage from Sheikh Imran's book, The Strategic Importance of Dreams and Visions in Islam, Eschatological and Epistemological Implications of True Dreams and Visions, A View from Islam. Abu Huraira reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "When the time of the end of the world draws close, the dreams of a believer will hardly fail to come true. And a dream of a believer is one of the 46 parts of prophethood." That's from Sahih Bukhari, as well as Sahih Muslim. Sheikh Imran continues, "It is a matter of crucial importance, however, that Muslims recognize that the believers who will be blessed with continuous divine communication through good and true dreams will be those who adopt the Sufi epistemology and resist the Protestant version of Islam, which has made its ominous appearance in the world of Islam in direct consequence of the impact of modern Western materialist civilization on Muslim religious thought. We pray that Allah Most High may grant, both to this writer as well as to the discerning readers of this book, the will and the determination to strive to conform in external conduct with the way of life of Islam ordained by Allah Most High, and to pursue internal spiritual purification and growth to such an extent that we may all be blessed by Allah Most High with true and good dreams. Most of all, may Allah Most High continuously bless us with dreams of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah make it easy for us to eat less, sleep less, and talk less, to dislike noise, which is what music is today, and to long for solitude. May Allah cleanse and purify our hearts and bestow on us hearts filled with love, hearts which will shiver with awe when Allah's name is mentioned, hearts which will find solace and comfort in the sunshine as well as on rainy days, in the dhikr or remembrance of Allah.